Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch is an immigration attorney. She's joining us to talk about whether the president can suspend habeas corpus to deport illegal immigrants. Can the president really do this? I mean, is this really the kind of invasion the founding fathers were envisioning when they said that you could suspend habeas corpus for an invasion?
No, I would argue that this is certainly not what they were envisioning. And even when something as extreme as a suspension of habeas would happen, it would be up to Congress to do it and not the president. So I think it's just patently unconstitutional, would not survive litigation whatsoever. So I hope that it's another one of these empty threats that doesn't come to anything, because it is really concerning if you think about what is the writ of habeas corpus. This is the mechanism by which anybody who is being jailed or detained can challenge their detention and get, due process. I know that's a word that people throw around, but get review of their detention and their liberty. And if that's gone and there is no review of the president's decisions to detain people, then, I think all of us could follow that to the natural conclusion that any one of us is next.
Wouldn't it be like all the other 4 times that habeas corpus was suspended, where it was localized, with the exception of the Civil War? But after the Civil War Reconstruction, it was South Carolina. It was a specific situation. 1905 in the Philippines, there was a specific insurrection. It obviously didn't apply to everybody here on the mainland. Likewise, in the 1940s, when it was suspended again in Pearl Harbor. So wouldn't that be one of the counterpoints, though, saying, look, this is just specifically for those that are here illegally? Like, how would they argue that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's certainly what they would say, but based on what we're seeing in the actions of the Trump administration and other cases, they expand it. They claim that people are, that we're at war with Venezuela and everyone from Venezuela is an enemy combatant, and because they have, a tattoo of a clown, that means they're part of a gang and therefore merit deportation to a torture center in El Salvador. I mean, I represent actual people in that situation, and these are people who have no criminal history. They were doing everything the right way. They were following all the rules, and yet here they find themselves accused of being violent, dangerous criminals. So I know firsthand the application would exceed itself, that it would not be limited to people who are, whatever they want to say, dangerous, violent criminals. And then the term illegal, there is no definition. There are millions of people who are in some type of legal process, who came in under parole, or they have a green card application pending, or they're in court proceedings. And yet these are people who are being called illegal and being detained. The scope expands and expands and expands. I mean, 3 months ago, we were saying, well, they're only going to go after the criminals, and now this week we're watching them, rip nursing infants out of their mother's arms. The thing goes beyond when it's left in the hands of the Trump administration, is what I've seen personally.
I think ripping babies out of mother's arms is a bit hyperbole, but I fear your point. As a person who is libertarian and supports Trump and voted for Trump, I too find this somewhat worrying, though, because if we're going to be intellectually honest, Kate, those on my side of the political aisle would have raised holy hell if habeas corpus has been suspended, say, on January 7th, right, with association of anybody that had traveled to Washington, D.C. That's where I think your point is very fair. At the end of the day, I wonder if this is just another of Trump's hyperbolic negotiating tactics. Put something kind of crazy on the table to kind of reset the pattern of discussion in all of this. But I guess who knows? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I will say that ripping the babies, I try not to be hyperbolic, especially on shows like this. I know that, reasonable minds can differ on policies. I just a couple of hours ago was watching a video of a 1-month-old ripped out of its mother's arms when, and the neighbors were trying to intervene. And that actually does go on. But to your question, I do think hopefully is just empty threats. This all came out of an interview that Stephen Miller gave. His modus operandi, obviously, we've seen this now, we're in the second administration, is to throw a lot of spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. A lot of it doesn't. And so hopefully this is that. I feel fairly confident that the federal courts are not going to stand by if this is attempted. And so I think even if the action occurs, I believe that it would be blocked in the federal courts.
Yeah, and it would be hard to see Congress going along with it as well. So fascinating stuff. Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch, thanks for your time. We appreciate it.